Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm delighted to be here. I was all prepared to tell you what my corporate title is, but that's already been done. So I'm Claire Chamberlain. I've been involved in this work, meaning social innovation and philanthropy, for the past 10 plus years, 8 of those at BlackRock. And today we are publishing our first impact report on an initiative that I had a role in leading called the BlackRock Emergency Savings Initiative. Sort of a mouthful, but representing some really important and groundbreaking work. And before I take some time this morning to share with you how we approached the emergency savings crisis here in the United States and the partners we've worked with, I just wanted to pause and note already today, this morning, we're only newly underway, that the breadth of topics that the summit is seeking to highlight and engage all of you on is really extraordinary. So we've heard about the challenges of love over hate in the context of our prison system, the conversation, wide-ranging conversation about mental health. The fact that I think just about all of us stood up when asked the question, has mental health touched your life in some important way? And I'm here to talk about creating financial resiliency for working families and working individuals. Our work has been centered largely to date in the United States, although we are also working in the UK. And I think over time that will expand beyond those 2 countries. So that's going to hit pause on that and go into a little bit about what we've done and why. Before I get into more of the specifics on the initiative and the partnerships in the initiative, I want to talk about a woman named Jennifer. Jennifer is a 32-year-old single mom. She has a 4-year-old son named Noah. And Jennifer has a warehouse job where she, after dropping off her son at daycare, she drives 40 miles each day to go to her job. She's an hourly worker. She makes about $28 an hour. And she's managed to sign up for her employer retirement savings plan, and so she's putting a little bit away in that plan, but that's obviously for the long term. And in the near term, she is living very much paycheck to paycheck. She has no short-term savings. She has really nothing to fall back on other than to hope that the income that she brings in on an hourly basis is up to the expenses that she and her son incur on a daily basis. Recently, things have, while they've never been easy for Jennifer and for Noah, they seem to have become even more difficult. Maybe that's because she's had a rent increase. Maybe it's because the price of groceries, as we all know, have gone up over the last year plus. But in any case, she is deeply aware of how financially vulnerable she and her young son are. She knows that if she has a flat tire, that she doesn't have the extra wherewithal to get that tire fixed. And so until she can figure out some means, either potentially borrowing from family or friends, she's going to have to take a bus 90 minutes to drop off her son, to then go to work, probably get to work late, and then have to leave work early to pick up her son. The impact of that is not only stressful and sort of physical wear and tear and disruptive to her child, but it also means she's working less hours. And so that has the very opposite effect of what she needs in that moment of needing to come up with some extra cash in order to take care of an unexpected emergency. She has access to a credit card. There isn't a lot of credit on that card. She's pretty much generally fully used that up. And so she is, as I said, is very aware that she is sort of one unexpected expense away from, being financially distressed. And that thought, that knowledge, makes her stressed and distracted sometimes on the job. She thinks about it when she's out with her friends, and she thinks about it when she's with her son and takes him to the park. So it's a stress that takes her to another place that's generally non-productive from the place where she needs to be at that moment in time. The thing about Jennifer is it's not a unique story, sadly. Jennifer is not alone. We know from the most recent Federal Reserve data on the status of households that as recently as last year, there are 37% of Americans who couldn't come up with $400 to meet an unexpected emergency expense. They couldn't come up with that without either going and taking out a payday loan, which we know has onerous interest rates, or maybe borrowing against their 401k. If they're lucky, maybe they have resources with family and friends. But it's a problem that we know faces a tremendous amount of people. And so at BlackRock, where our purpose as an enterprise is to help people build financial security and acquire dignity through that financial security over a lifetime, we know that purpose can sound a bit tone deaf when you are struggling day to day to meet short-term needs, and when you're living, as Jennifer is, paycheck to paycheck. And so 4 years ago, when we decided it was time for BlackRock to establish and launch what we wanted to be a flagship program, we said, let's begin at the earlier part of that financial journey, and let's figure out a way, how can we make saving for the short term? How can we make coming up with that protective safety net of a couple of $1,000s, a couple of $100s, how can we make that easier for people? And if we make it easier for people, can people living on low and moderate incomes, can they save as well? And so that was the rationale, the hypothesis under which we launched the Emergency Savings Initiative in 2019. As you all appreciate, while people had started to talk about this lack of short-term savings being available to people back in, actually the original stats came out in 2017, and most people were frankly aghast that 40% of Americans were in that kind of precarious financial state. Well, as we all went through the pandemic alone but together, that reality became even more apparent. And so here we are on the other side of the pandemic, and the stats they're better by a couple of percentage points, but they're still significantly not great. And so when we launched the Emergency Savings Initiative 4 years on, what's happened? And I'm delighted to say, and this will be shared in the report, that we have reached 10 million Americans, and we have helped them through our partners build an incremental $2 billion in short-term savings. So for the first time, going back to Jennifer works for an employer that has made building short-term savings possible. And she's now at a state or a position where every month she's putting away $50 a month. Over a year, that's $600. Now, this is not meant to be permanent savings, it's meant to be usable savings. So she adds to that savings, she draws down upon that savings if in the case of a flat tire, that's what's needed. So it's a reality that 4 years ago, we weren't so sure was possible, but we're delighted that in fact is not only possible, but is happening. And so some of the numbers that I've just shared are numbers that are continuing to grow and to increase. So how did we do this? How did we as a collective in this Emergency Savings Initiative, how did we accomplish this? Well, one, we didn't do it alone. We deliberately, from the onset, established we went out and looked for expert consumer financial health nonprofits who we saw as each brought something different to the table, but these were nonprofits that were well-versed in behavioral design of products, that had worked with different large-scale W-2 employers, had relationships with record keepers, with payroll providers, and we said, we're gonna fund you to help us reach out into as many channels as possible and start to experiment in the field, in the marketplace. And so we didn't have a preset idea of a solution, but rather that we wanted to experiment broadly. And we wanted to reach people where they were, which was generally has people come into contact with their paycheck. And how could we take the friction at that point out of receiving that money so that people were able to put aside something to build this protective savings. In addition to working with our 3 nonprofit partners who are delighted to name our Commonwealth, who joins me here today, Common Sense Lab at Duke, and then the Financial Health Network. We also deliberately recruited and identified financial services providers who we knew were beginning to focus in on emergency savings and had the scale and the customer relationships to facilitate this experimentation. And then we also, at the same time, in parallel, reached out to employers that we knew cared deeply about the financial wellness and the financial stress facing their workforces. And so we recruited employers like UPS and Levi's and AutoNation to join this collaborate and to come together and experiment. And it was with these multiple actors that we were able to reach people in the workplace and begin to demonstrate that this kind of short-term savings build was possible. The other thing that's happened in the course of this work is it's really elevated the conversation about emergency and short-term savings. And this has meant that policymakers have also been paying attention. And so the evidence base being built in the marketplace was relevant to senators and congressmen and their staffers working on the evolution of retirement legislation. And last year in December, Secure 2.0 was passed and incorporated important emergency savings features to make it easier for employers to offer that alongside retirement savings. So there's that sort of cross-sector impact is something that we've also seen happen as a result of the Emergency Savings Initiative. So lots of good news, lots of progress, but there's still so much to be done. The majority of Americans who are living on low and moderate incomes, and the majority of people in the middle class are struggling to put aside savings that they can use and reuse and have access to in a protective way. And so when you leave here today, think about the people for whom this kind of work benefits. Think about Jennifer. Think about the guy at the gas station. Think about the Uber driver that may take you to the airport later today. There are so many people, gig workers, W-2 employees, there's so many people for whom taking this friction out of building savings, making it easier, making that savings, putting it in a place that's safe, putting it in a place where you can extract it without penalty, where that is a game changer for their lives and their experience day to day. And so with that, I would invite you to read the report, which is available today on savingsproject.org. Again, that's savingsproject.org. In the next couple of days, it will be available on BlackRock.com as well. And so thank you for your time and your attention. And I look forward to hearing about more of the good work that this community of social innovators is making possible. Thank you.